We will move right on to the talks we've got today. The focus on today is around the disease outbreaks and how we might manage for that. Hence, the quite a bit of interest we've got from our overseas participants, and also recognising those participants from the Australian pork industry that have joined us today. We're going to kick off with Lachlan Marshall. Lachlan's a Senior Project Officer with Southern Queensland Landscapes, and is also a conservation biologist interested in on-ground work to manage threats to the environment and industries. Lachlan's going to be supported then by Darren Marshall, who's a specialist in engaging land managers in effective coordinated pest control. Darren's also in the final throes of doing his PhD in partnership between New England University and Penn State University. And Darren's looking at different engagement strategies to motivate land managers to take a collective action to address feral pigs. So I'll hand across to you, Lachlan. It's all yours.
G'day, everyone. Yeah, my name's Lachlan Marshall, and yeah, I'd just like to run through a project that I was lucky enough to work on for the first 6 months of last year. But firstly, I'd just like to thank Mark Tarrant and Ellie Keat from New South Wales Local Land Services on this project, because without them, it wouldn't have happened the way it did. So yeah, thank you. Next slide, please. So, as the title said, is it possible to locally eradicate feral pigs? What we wanted to look at was, if FMD was to get into Australia, would it be possible to locally eradicate feral pigs within a buffer zone? So you can see on your screen there, we've got a purple circle and a blue circle. So the purple circle is the 10-kilometre buffer zone around core home ranges of feral pigs that we had collared in this area 3 years prior. The area that we wanted to concentrate on was the blue buffer zone, the blue circle. In the center of that, you can see a red highlight. That's our fake FMD outbreak site. So the reason we picked Nulla had this previous core home range data that we could use. It had that variation in land type uses. So we had cropping, we had grazing, we had intensive feedlot areas, and we also had national parks. So we had a good mixture there. Like I mentioned before, we also had the feral pig collar data to assist us with where we might put in some of our control activities. And we also had landholders in that area partially engaged from these previous projects that we had in the area. So what we wanted to do was throw everything at feral pigs to try and eradicate them. We wanted to aerial shoot at them, we wanted to trap them, and we wanted to bait them to try and see whether we could locally eradicate. Next slide, please. So first things first, we had to work out how many pigs we were dealing with. We chucked up a thermal drone to monitor in the area. So this is back into this 5K buffer zone. So this drone flew a transect of 100 meters apart. So this was over five survey nights, and in that time, the drone picked up a total of 166 animals. So out of those 166 animals, 69 of those were feral pigs. So that gave us a start with how many pigs we were dealing with within that 5K buffer zone. Next slide, please. We then started the collaring. So I got busy and deployed 17 feral pig collars out there on feral pigs within that 5K buffer zone. So these collars were important. We wanted to put them on these pigs to understand how their home ranges and core home ranges compared to the previous pigs, how they interacted with all this control that was about to hit them within the next 6 months, and to also use them as Judas animals at the end. So we could then fly to these pigs and target their mates. So with the collars that were on the animals, they took a waypoint every half an hour of that pig's life. And so that gave us updated data every 6 hours. We could actually have a look at where that pig was and get live feeds to implement that Judas technology. So effort. So you can see there we've got some pretty inventive names: Lightning McQueen, Ron Burgundy, and then some normal ones as well. Next slide, please. So on top of the thermal surveying, we also deployed 40 cameras within that 5K buffer zone. So what we wanted to do was really concentrate on these pre-existing core home ranges to see whether the pig population would drop or increase with all of these control measures we were about to throw at them. So these cameras are actually still out there today. So come June of this year, I will bring them in. So that'll give us a really, really good idea. These cameras were deployed back in January of last year and will be pulled in June of this year. So that'll give us a really, really good idea of the pig population before and after this control period. So you can see there, but each of those green dots are placed within those core home ranges where we could to monitor that feral pig population. Next slide, please. There we go. So yeah, then we got really, really busy. With LLS, we deployed 62 traps across that 5K buffer zone, and then when we ran out of options, we went into that 10K. So we really peppered this area. So for the next 6 months, we really wanted to run these traps nearly every day. So these traps were free fed for the first 2 weeks of each month, and then we trapped in the last 2 weeks. So in each of these traps, we had a mixture of fermented wheat and fermented corn. And we also had a mixture of different trap designs. So in the top right-hand corner, you can see we've got a panel trap, and then the bottom two, we've got 2 different types of box traps with different door mechanisms. Next slide, please. So the first aerial shoot from the 1st to the 7th of February. Within that, we really wanted to control pigs within that 5K buffer zone, in that blue ring. You can see there outside of that in the blue shade, that is the total of the 44 properties that we also had on board. So not only did we shoot feral pigs within the 5K, but we also targeted pigs outside of that into that 10K and a little bit further on. So next slide, please. So in the first aerial shoot for just the 5K buffer zone, we took out 121 pigs. Next slide. And then in the overall area, in that blue shaded area that I just explained, we took out 833 pigs. Next slide, please. In the first month of the event in February, we trapped a total of 43 pigs out of those 62 traps. Next slide, please. So the next month, in the first month, we took out 121 pigs. The next 8 days worth of aerial shooting, we took out a following 88 pigs. Click, please. In the total in the overall area, we dropped that. We went from 833, we're down to 460 now, giving us a total of nearly 1,300 pigs across the whole site. Next slide, please. The trapping effort for March, we took out a further 24 pigs, giving us a total tally of 67 so far. Next slide, please. For shoot 3, the next lot of 8 days worth of shooting, we took out 25 pigs. So the boys really struggled in this one. They're starting to tell me that, we're getting on top of them. We're taking them out. We're only seeing 25 pigs. We've been shooting this area for 8 days, and we're getting 25. We're getting on top of them. Things are looking pretty good. Next slide, please. And in the overall area, we're down to 334 pigs. So we're starting to get a decrease in the feral pig numbers through the aerial shooting. Next slide, please. For the month of April, for the trapping effort across the 62 traps, we got another 23 pigs. So things are getting tough now. We're seeing less pigs in the landscape. We're covering a lot of country, and we're not getting much of a result. As it is very frustrating on ground, but it means that we might be having an actual impact in this pig population. So as you can see in this photo, I chucked it in because I really like this one, because you can see that we've got 2 collared pigs in these traps. So these pigs have been collared now for 3 or 4 months, and we generally get from a lot of landholders, a lot of people, you know, do these pigs come back once you've drugged them, put the collar on them, and then let them go? You know, you're never going to retrap these pigs. But more than not, we see them back because they're not hurt. They're coming back. They know there's free tucker in there, and they get let go again. So I just wanted to chuck that one in. Next slide, please. So the 4th and final shoot, we've gone from 121 to 88 to 25, and then the 4th shoot for another 8 days, we're back down to 25 again. So we're starting to see it plateau a bit. You know, we're spending a lot of time in the air for not many pigs. Next slide, please. And for the overall site, we shot another 306 pigs, giving us a total of just shy of 2,000 pigs overall. So next slide, please. The last month of trapping, across the 62 traps, I've burnt a lot of diesel. I spent a lot of time on ground playing with sticky grain, all for 2 pigs, giving us a total of 92 pigs for the month, for the trapping event across that 5-month period. Next slide, please. So we've shot the pigs for the last 4 months, for the first 8 days of each of those months. We've trapped every day. We've really put a dent in this pig population. What's left? What else can we do? That was baiting. So we wanted to put out as many grain dumps as we could in areas in places that landholders would let us to see whether we could bait the remaining pigs that were too smart for the chopper and too smart to be trapped. So what we did was we went along and tipped out 20-litre buckets of fermented grain with molasses on top in 32 different locations. Next slide, please. So out of those 32 locations, we only had 3 grain dumps hit by pigs. So you can see on the map on the left, the 2 orange stars are hog-on sites where we had pigs coming in. So we baited 3 pigs off the camera data with the hog-on. And then with the blue star further to the left, we baited 20 pigs. So what's interesting with that blue star location is with the trapping and with the aerial shooting, we didn't trap or shoot any pigs on that property at all, or see any pigs on that property. I go and put a grain dump on the ground, and then all of a sudden, 20 pigs out of what seems like thin air pop out. And so you can see the video on the right-hand side there. That's those 20 pigs eating that grain. So I think that really highlights that we need to use all of the tools that are available to us. We can't just rely on aerial shooting or trapping or baiting. We need to use a combination of all of them, because pigs are smart. Some methods work better than others for different individual pigs. And I think that's a really, really good example for that one. Next slide, please. So with all of that pressure on those pigs, we baited, we shot at them for the first 8 days of each month, and we trapped them. What you can see there on your screen is each individual collared pig's movement data. So greens, the reds, the orange, the blues, the purples, that is each different pig. And you can see there, which amazes me, a lot of those pigs, or 90% of those pigs, did not move out of that 5K buffer zone. So where we collared them, they didn't go anywhere with all of that pressure that they were under for that time. If it was me, I would have been that purple fella and got out of there. Next slide, please. So what you can see on your screen is a video of the collared pigs. So each of those different dots and different squiggly lines is each of the 17 different pigs. That's their fixed point every half an hour. So at the top of the video, you can see a timeline. So that's sped up. So it's roughly about every 10 or so seconds is a day from what you're seeing there. So what this is, we've got the collared pigs out in the landscape. And then what will happen here when we get to the 27th of the 3rd, you'll see a blue dot come in, and that will be the helicopter. So I just want you to watch and see the interaction that the pigs have with when the chopper's introduced. Everything's pretty calm at the minute. They're not going too far, and then bang. The pigs really pick up their movement patterns. They're not going fast still, but you can tell that they know there's something going on that they don't want to be around. So this chopper stays out until the 3rd, sorry. So the chopper's still going around. And I just want to highlight too, with the chopper, we're not actually targeting the collared pigs at this stage. We're shooting their mates around them, but we're leaving the collared pigs in the landscape. Pigs are still going nuts. Come the 3rd, chopper's gone. Now, for those of you with a keen eye, you'll see when we get to around the 5th or the 6th of March, you'll notice that the pig population, the pigs slow right back down. Now they're back to normal. They've settled back into their routine. So it's roughly about 2.5 to 3 days after that aerial shoot that the pigs come back. Pigs come back to their normal routine behavior. So the other thing I want to highlight on this slide is down the bottom, we've got a table. So February shoot, a March shoot, April shoot, and a May shoot. So the first line item you can see there is we've got 13 pigs collared for the February shoot. When the chopper went up to target those feral pigs, they only identified one of the collared animals. So they're not even seeing, they're missing more than 90% of the actual collared pigs that are in the landscape for that time. So when we gave them the data, they only found 11 of those 13 pigs that were in the landscape. And then they shot 6 of their mates off that. Come into March, we've got 16 pigs in the landscape collared. Without no data, without giving the chopper pilot any data, they only find 5 collared animals. So this is a bit of a common theme you can see there in April as well. 17 pigs, they've only found 4. May, 17 pigs, they only find 5. So really, we're only seeing, if we use this as a bit of an example, we're only seeing a quarter to maybe a third of the actual pigs that are in that landscape with the chopper. Next slide, please. So we've baited, we've shot at them, we've trapped. We had 69 pigs in that thermal survey at the start. We put the drone back up at the end after we'd finished all of the on-ground control. We then got a count on ground of 29 pigs. So we dropped the population by 60%. So some of the literature that you might read would say that you need to have an impact on a feral pig population, you need to drop the population by 70% within a reasonably small time frame to have an impact. So with all of that effort that we put into it for that 4 to 5 months, we still only dropped that population by 60%. So it's a little bit scary in a way. Next slide, please. So what did we learn from this study? So if FMD was to hit, the amount of effort needed to control feral pigs is huge. It's massive. I spent a lot of time down at this site working with a lot of other people within a lot of hours, and to get a drop of 60%, I was a little bit shocked. We need to use a combination of all feral pig control techniques. There is no silver bullet. We need to be using the aerial shooting. We need to be using baiting. We need to be using trapping, and then in some cases even the use of on-ground shooting and hunting is beneficial as well. And the importance of monitoring. We need to know what we're dealing with before. We need to know what the population of pigs that we're dealing with before we do anything. There's no good of me coming here and telling you that I shot 6,000 pigs out of this area if there was 60,000. We had no impact. So the importance of monitoring before and after control is crucial. that's all for my little talk. I'll pass over to Darren for his. Well, if you want to go back a couple of slides, please. Thank you. Okay, hello. Just a couple of things to touch on there from me. I think Mark Tarrant, Eradicate, and Lockie did a fantastic job on that project. I call it World War Pig. I've never ever seen a project throw so much at a small population, and I guess it's scary, as Lockie said, as to what impact that had. Just to restate what Lockie said, if you take out 70% of the population and it's a good season, the feral pig numbers stay the same. So you're not having an impact or reducing the population in a good season unless you take out over 70%. And I think really importantly from the collars here, and at this site, we're seeing that we're not fighting reinfestation rates. These pigs aren't moving that far. So what we're battling is their breeding rate. So, you know, what we are fighting with all of these community groups is not necessarily pigs moving from outside of their area in. We are just fighting the breeding rate of the feral pigs that survive the control measure. So this project was brilliant. This project was fantastic. It engaged the community, but it didn't have the community doing the work. LLS did a brilliant job of supplying all that aerial shooting. Lockie put in a massive effort on baiting and trapping. But if we were to do this in the real world, in a real disease outbreak, we would have to have the community involved. So the challenge for me is, how do we maintain or get a community to even start to implement a project of this intensity or greater to get that impact? Because the tools are okay. This is not about saying aerial shooting doesn't take out enough pigs or baiting doesn't take out enough pigs. It's a fantastic result that LLS have taken out over half the population. That is absolutely brilliant. But how can we progress that? How can we motivate people to continue on with that effort? So LLS have done this project, and you'll hear from Beck around a lot of different areas, and they've given a lot of community groups a fantastic start. Now we've got to progress. Now we've got to keep going. So that's the challenge for me. How do we do that? How do we maintain an effort? How do we keep the effort going? And most importantly to me, how do we create ownership? How do we get people to own this problem and actually want to do something about it? So in the little bit of time we've got left, I just want to talk about another project that's similar, where we've got 6 different communities, just like this Nulla Manor group. And I just want to tell you the results of a few very interesting things that we've got out of those communities by doing all of this GPS collaring with them. The first challenge for me is, when you ask community members and you ask the landholders out there, do you know how to control feral pigs? They will answer their surveys and their questionnaires brilliantly. They'll say you need to do coordinated aerial control, coordinated baiting. All nil tenure approaches come out well in front of all of the individual approaches. The bit that knocked me right over was the next question was, in the last 6 months, which control methods did you use on your property? The answer to that was hunting, on-ground shooting, a bit of trapping, and wouldn't it be good if we could bring bounties in? So the landholders have the knowledge, they know how to do this work, but when it comes to the actual time to do it, they are implementing different control techniques. So they have the knowledge, but when it comes to the intent and behavior, it's not working. It's not translating across. A second finding that I had was the real overwhelming need that a lot of the land managers wanted a coordinator. They want someone to drive it. They want somebody to motivate them, to organize the events. If you just leave it to the community to do themselves, it will stop. It will peter out.
they all strive to have the coordinator. They all strive to have that person to play that role for them. And the final one for me is trust. Across all of these 6 sites, trust was the biggest issue. Who do land managers trust? Lockie and I put a lot of work in. We do all this collaring with these people, and we feel like we build a really good rapport with them. And then, you know, we speak to, or other people interview them afterwards to find out their thinking. And the land managers in the group still trust their neighbours more than they trust us. They trust their neighbours' information about how to control feral pigs more so than the information we've given them through the project. Now, I shouldn't be so cheeky to think that I'd make any difference, because I guess, you know, we go in there for 1 year, 2 years, and they've got a lifetime of experience with their neighbours. So, of course, they're going to trust them. The problem is there's the pub talk. There's all of those myths out there. And there's all of these fantastic biophysical research that's out there that's dispelling these myths. But we have to remember that people still really trust their neighbours and not this research that we're necessarily doing. And so we have to manage that. We have to work with that. John, I think I'll pull up there and we might move into questions.